So I'm Jason King. I'm the founder of Unsung.org. We're happy to be a sponsor of this conference. We don't really sponsor anything. Mo just likes us a whole lot and lets us put our logo up there, which is really great. I don't know if Dean mentioned that, but Dean, our MC today, is actually my co-founder at Unsung. We founded Unsung together. So what is Unsung? Well, this weekend, I guess it's a Sunday and a Monday, so not really a weekend, but close to it. At this conference, you're going to hear a lot of things about innovation in the financial space. You're going to hear about decentralized prediction markets, and you're going to hear about blockchain assets, and you're going to hear about all the wonderful things that Bitcoin can do for finance and money. I sort of come from a different space in the Bitcoin network, is that I believe that Bitcoin, probably more than anything else, has an ability to transform poverty and inhumanity in the world and really bring up the lesser and unfortunate people in the world more than any other technology. And I think that the things that we get through the decentralized nature that Bitcoin shows us are going to really just really make the world a better place for everybody. And so I'm heavily involved in the Bitcoin nonprofit space. Now, what Unsung does is we tackle a problem. We're based in the United States, but it's a problem that's all over the world, which is hunger. Now, in the United States, 49 million Americans live in hunger. Most people don't believe that, but 1 in 7 Americans don't know where their next meal is coming from. That's every man, woman, and child in supposedly one of the most developed countries on earth don't know where a basic need's going to be met from. Now, that's terrible on its own. But in the United States, we throw away $500 billion in food annually. So we're literally letting 50 million people starve while we throw $500 billion worth of food in the garbage. This is a ridiculous problem, right? So it's millions of people are starving while billions of dollars worth of food are being thrown into the garbage. So at Unsung, we're trying to do something about that. And basically, we're trying to leverage decentralization and the sharing economy to fix this problem and to solve hunger in the United States. So if your restaurant has excess food, or your grocery store, or you're a catering service, or hell, you just have extra food in your cabinet that you're not going to eat, you can just go onto Unsung, and you can tell us what you have. And our pool of volunteer drivers will get a notification that food's available, and they can come pick it up, and they can deliver it to someone in need. It's sort of a simple concept that most people want to know why that hasn't already existed. But we have Uber for everything else, right? We have Uber for dog walking at this point. So we want to use it for something that's like really, really effective for humanitarian aid. And on Unsung, every meal that's donated is broadcast live on our feed. So if you donate food, you'll see the food being donated. Right? So it's not this arbitrary concept that it's happening. When a meal is delivered, you see a picture of it. And that picture becomes viral. If you look at our Twitter feed or our Instagram feed, it's literally just meal on meal on meal on meal on meal being delivered. So people can participate in a very individual level and actually see the good being done. And on Unsung, what we've done is we've gamified it, and people on Unsung actually compete with each other to be the people to deliver the most meals. So in your neighborhood on Unsung, you can log in and you can see who the person is that's delivering the most food in your area. And if you like that behavior and you want to incentivize them to keep it up, you can tip him directly in Bitcoin. His address is right there. And so instead of it being this top-down approach where nonprofit organizations advertise for a lot of money and they want you to send them a lot of money, and then you hope that you get value out of that. It's the opposite of that. In Unsung, you actually see the work being done and you incentivize to keep that behavior going. So we think that that's like a really revolutionary approach. So from the start, we've only been around for about 10 months. We started in January. Matter of fact, we launched at Mo Levin's conference in Miami this year. From the start, we've come from it is that we wanted to build a set of tools and then let people that wanted to engage in this behavior use the tools and become the network that does this good. But it was an untested idea. We thought it would work. We didn't know if it would work or not. So when we announced in Miami, we had been beta testing it for a little while, more like alpha testing it for a little while, and we've fed a couple of dozen meals. We are based in Baltimore in the United States, and so for the first 6 months, we were only in Baltimore and Washington, D.C., and we fed a couple thousand meals in the first 6 months. And so that was early adopters, people that were using it, friends of ours that we could convince to take part in this behavior. We fed, a couple of thousand meals, which works out to being a couple dozen meals a week or so. And then these are actual pictures of meals being handed out on the Unsung app. But in July, we opened the app for the first time in Austin, Texas. There's a decentralized ride-sharing app called Arcade City, and I ended up on a talk show with the CEO of Arcade City, and the host of the talk show sort of flippantly said, "Hey, Arcade City has drivers. I'm sure that they would be interested in doing, delivering food for Unsung." And I kind of was like, "Yeah, that'd be really great." And the next day, 100 Arcade City drivers signed up to be Unsung drivers in Austin. And so we sort of pushed really hard to get Unsung out in Austin. And then at the time, the entirety of the meals fed on the Unsung app was not much more than 1,000. So we said, okay, this will be a really cool thing we'll do. We'll open a new city, and then we'll do a 1,000 meal challenge. We'll say, who of the 2 cities can do 1,000 meals again? And mind you, it had taken 6 months, and we had done just a little over 1,000 meals total on Unsung. So we figured it would take a little while. Well, oh, sorry, I thought I had a better slide than that. Austin killed us in like a week and a half. So we grew from being 1,000 meals in 6 months to being 1,000 meals less than a month later. And so now we're 3 months from that. We just fed our 12,000th meal on the platform. And from our initial assumption that if we built tools and we just sort of told people how they could use them and how they could become this change in their community by doing it, that people would organically go out and they would figure out better ways to use this. And we're seeing this. This is in Austin, Texas. This is a picture in Capital Factory, which is a tech co-working and accelerator space in Austin, Texas. And our drivers in Austin, on their own, came to us and said, hey, when we're delivering food to homeless people, we're finding out that they say that they need socks. Now, I'm a homeless rights advocate for 5 or 6 years. I know this. I know that the most requested article of clothing from a homeless person is a sock. But just a normal person that's in Austin that chose to participate in the Unsung app, they don't know that. Well, they found it out on their own. We didn't tell it to them. They found out that information. So they came to us and they said, hey, we want to do a sock drive. We want to start collecting socks. Then when we deliver food, we'll deliver socks too. So on their own, at Capital Factory, they started soliciting socks. And then when they took meals out, they took socks out too. And we didn't build that feature, right? It wasn't a request. People just started doing this, just started using us and just making their neighborhood better. And then we've gotten some other strategic partnerships. So all of this food is from Groupon. We've just recently partnered with Groupon. They have an organization called Order Up that's sort of like Grubhub. I don't know what the European equivalent of that is. But it's basically a place where if you want to order from a restaurant, you can go to a centralized place and you can place their order and someone will bring you food from one of those restaurants. We're partnering with Order Up and we were dealing with their excess. So that was like when they had a doubled catering order or a misorder or something like that. Instead of throwing it in the trash, they would send it to Unsung. Well, they were acquired by Groupon. So Groupon found out, that they were passing out their excess food. So now we're in talks with Groupon across the entire country, which I'm sure you guys know what Groupon is here. And so this is just happens, right? This is just building tools and building the network effect out. And then the other cool thing is the same thing happened with Soylent, our Seattle coordinator. Oh yeah, by the way, we're in 14 cities now in the United States. And actually, it's probably a lot more than that. We're major in 14 cities, or we have larger pods in 14 cities. We have interest sort of all over the country. But this is Armand. He's our Seattle coordinator. And he drinks Soylent, and just when he was out passing out meals, he just started passing out Soylent too, because he thought it was a good product, and he handed it out. And so those pictures of him handing out Soylent ended up on our social media feed, and Soylent got tagged. And then Soylent contacted him and asked him if they would be willing to pass out Soylent when we did our meals too. And so these are cases of Soylent that Soylent now sends us. And in Seattle, when we take out meals, we also take out bottles of Soylent, which is great because a lot of our food's really perishable. That's why we get it, because it has a shelf life. It needs to be handed out and consumed quickly. But it's awesome to be able to give someone a meal and then also like be able to give them a bottle of Soylent and they could use later on when they get hungry. And that's really it. So that's what I'm here to describe. And that's what we do. And we think that what we're doing is highly scalable, and that's how we built it out. If you track our growth over 2016 so far, we have increased 10% in all of our major metrics every week for 2016, and that's up until this week. So that's users and meals fed and community leaders and engagement. It's 10% per week, which is ridiculous. And we just hope we can keep 10% up. And that's all I've got. If anyone's got any questions, unsung.org is our web address. Yeah. Okay, what was the first part of your question? I'm sorry. Okay, so currently the only way that, let me back up. I got into the Bitcoin space because I founded an organization called Sean's Outpost, and all Sean's Outpost did was we solicited donations in Bitcoin, and then we fed homeless people with it. So Sean's Outpost was based in Pensacola, Florida. Still there, still wonderful organization. Fed 167,000 meals to the homeless in Northwest Florida using exclusively cryptocurrency, which is fantastic. But in the course of doing that, we found out how bad the food waste situation was in the United States. And that sort of became the impetus for Unsung. So that model of soliciting donations, then taking that money and then going and buying food works, right? But it doesn't scale very well, because for it to scale, you have to get a lot more donations, then you have to go buy more food, and that's a very linear way of scaling. So with Unsung, what we've done is we put the incentive on the other side, is that like on the getting food and delivering it, in the gamification of the platform, we have leaderboards. And so on a leaderboard, you can see who the drivers are that are engaging in this behavior the most, and their Bitcoin address is right there. So you can actually see the person that's doing the work and then tip them for the behavior that they're engaging in, which we feel is a better way of incentivizing growth and scalability within the platform, if that makes sense. Now, why do I think Bitcoin's going to be transformative? So I'm in the United States, right, and we definitely have problems. And I'm a homeless rights advocate, and it's a terrible place to be homeless. But as bad as things are in the United States, outside of it, there's billions of people that live in significantly worse conditions. And one of the things that's indicative to being a homeless person that most people don't get is that you constantly have all of your assets on you. They're physically on you, and it's generally just cash. It's generally not a lot of it, right? Because if you don't have a residence and you can't get mail, and they can't run a credit check on you because you don't have a residence, then you can't get a bank account. And there's a myriad of other reasons why you might not be able to get a bank account, but even in the United States, if you can't prove residency, you're gonna have a very difficult time getting a bank account. So that means you don't have a safe, I know in this room we're gonna have people that all have issues with banks, right? I have issues with banks too, right? But what they do is they let you put some money in a bank that you don't have to hold on to, right? That you don't have to worry about someone physically coming and taking it. Now, you can make inflation arguments and we can make all of those sorts of things, but physically someone's not gonna, if they take my wallet, they're gonna get a couple of bucks, they're gonna get my bank card, and I'm gonna call my bank, and I'm gonna say, hey, my bank card got stolen. And they're gonna put a block on that card, issue me a new one, and it's not gonna be that big of a deal. When a homeless person gets robbed, which happens a lot, because they're not treated very well, and there's a lot of infighting within the own communities. So like a lot of times, a homeless person will be sleeping, everything that they own is on them, and then they get robbed, and then they're back to zero. I mean, most people would consider them at zero, so then they're kind of less than zero, right? So there's no ability for savings. There's no ability to like create their own safety net, or if they have a fortune, they get a job, it's very difficult for them to ever get that leg up. Bitcoin and cryptocurrency as a whole do that function natively, right? Is that like we can give someone the ability to store value without that value actually physically having to be on your body. And that, while banking and financial services have tons of other benefits that add on to that physical ability of not being physical, that innate ability of Bitcoin, I think is going to be hugely transformative for the 5 billion people on Earth that can't get a bank account. And so I see it in the United States, which is a pretty good place. You have a pretty good chance of getting a bank account in the US. But there are 5 billion people on Earth that have no access to financial services at all. So they're experiencing the same thing on a daily basis. May not be homeless, but this ability of having to physically protect your wealth, it's a real problem. And Bitcoin's going to alleviate that. And that's the main reason why I think that Bitcoin's going to be very transformative for the most unfortunate people on Earth. Anything else? I know I'm the odd one out. Most people didn't come here to hear about nonprofits and charity, but yeah. I don't know that we're at the level to really have experienced that issue yet. I mean, we're a very lean organization. In the US, I actually know that it's generally actually the opposite, is that it's actually that most nonprofits actually raise money and spend an astronomical amount on administration, and then they take flack for the fact that they didn't put that in. Now, a lot of times there's a misnomer in that I have an issue with, which is that the people that decide that they're going to spend their life working in a nonprofit, working on a charitable organization, to somehow segregate them and say that they're not part of the cause, because it's not like a person that gives their life to going, like they're choosing to work for a nonprofit to go out and feed the poor, and that's what they do, right? To like somehow say that that person isn't an integral part of feeding the poor it's ridiculous. And so to label them that as an administrative cost, I think is an issue too. So I think a lot of it is a perception, but I think that a bigger issue is transparency. Is that we have this superposition with charities worldwide, which is that almost everyone agrees that charities should exist and that charities do benefit, but almost everyone, and if everyone in this room, if you're honest, you don't fully trust charities, right? Because of that, because you feel like you're going to give them money and they're not going to use it real well, right? So it's a weird place to be, because you admit that they do good, but you also admit that you don't trust them, right? So things like blockchain accounting, where we can have like pure transparency of like how the funds are being used, I think that's going to go a long way to alleviating that dissonance between knowing that it's a good that needs to happen and being able to actually trust that that good is happening. And so I think that a lot of that stuff will start happening. That's where blockchain will really come in. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I mean, currently, things like web wallets, right? Like you could go to I'm not saying that there's not problems with them, right? But you can have a web-based wallet. Blockchain.info has, a very well-used web wallet, and you could go to a public terminal and use it. I know a lot of people have a lot of problems when I'm saying public terminal and using Bitcoin, but it is something that does happen. People can't do it. But you could use it through a web browser, right, on a computer that you don't own, and you could store Bitcoins there, and they could be protected by a password and two-factor authentication. And there's not a physical item, because even if the computer is stolen, even though it's not yours, the computer's stolen, you didn't lose the Bitcoin, because they're being held as a web wallet. And there's lots of other ways to do things like that. And that's what I'm referring to, is the fact that I was, in 2013, I was stopped at the border coming back to the United States from Italy because I was coming back from a Bitcoin conference. I was coming back from a dark wallet meetup in Italy, and its founder, Amir Taki, set off some red flags, and a couple of us that came back from the conference got stopped at the border, and we got asked about Bitcoins in our bags, right? And they were like, yeah, so Bitcoins, so where are the Bitcoins? And they really thought that they were gonna find Bitcoins on us. And if you guys know Davi Barker, Davi is the founder of an organization called Bitcoin Not Bombs, and he makes Bitcoin pins, right? Like really cool lapel pins and stuff that are Bitcoin based. And like one of his best sellers is just the Bitcoin emblem. It looks kind of like a little coin. It's a Bitcoin. Well, he went through security at an airport, and people who were misinformed about how Bitcoin works thought he had a bag full of Bitcoins. And so he got grilled by TSA over this bag of pins because they couldn't put it through their head that it wasn't a physical thing that you can keep your hands on. So that's it, is that currently, everything in this wallet, these things, like you can rob me and you can take them from me. But like if I have that much Bitcoin in a wallet, you can take everything I have, and I don't lose everything that I have. It might be difficult, it might not be fun to have to back up my wallet or restore it or something like that, but at least I haven't gone back to zero. And that allows people to incrementally actually start improving their lives, which I think is going to be a very, very transformative thing for a lot of people. Did I get to your question? I kind of ramble sometimes, and I wonder if I actually answered what you said. So, okay, cool. Anything else? Big hem for Mo Levin, our conference organizer. I think this is a really great conference, and I really appreciate being here. Thanks, guys.